Born in 1949 out of the famed animation studios of United Productions of America, UPA, this quirky and nearsighted retiree would become one of the most beloved and famous cartoons of all time. How did this little and lucky old man find his way into the hearts of his many fans and his way out of the many sticky circumstances he would find himself in? Hear the story of Quincy Magoo and his odd collection of sidekick characters, told by those who helped create and bring him to life, TV, and the silver screen.
It just isn't Hollywood without Magoo.
Come with us now on another adventure with this cantankerous tune in Oh Magoo, You've Done It Again.
Mr. Magoo started out as being an adult character aimed at adult audiences. In fact, the UPA product was more sophisticated than what was being done at the other studios at the time, where it was talking animals and it was based on physical humor. Mr. Magoo is mostly based on verbal humor and his interaction with other adult characters.
Hi, George, we're in luck. A rescue ship. In you go. Yeah. Like ooh. Like double ooh.
John Hubley, who was a Disney animator who co-founded the UPA studio, Mr. Magoo was really his idea. He has said in later years that it was based on his uncle, his crotchety uncle.
Hey, who are you? I am the manager here. Now you run along. Come back and play tomorrow. I will not come back tomorrow. I will never come back to this place.
Mr. Magoo started as kind of this crotchety, irascible character in the theatrical shorts, and his design changed over time, and it got a little bit softer and a little bit smoother, and so did his personality. And by the time the studio changed direction, Mr. Magoo had become more of like a grandfather type, and they did kind of soften him even more when they were making the shorts for television, because that was aimed at the children's market, and the entire direction of the show changed. In fact, it kind of focused just on one narrow aspect of his personality, which was the nearsightedness.
We tried not to make fun of blind people, but you couldn't help but have all the gags built around the fact that he couldn't see. So we were, in effect, laughing at a blind person, but they made it work for some reason. I don't think anybody got their nose out of joint because of that.
Here, take my bag. And be careful of it. It's genuine alligator.
They were really aiming for adult laughs. They wanted to make sure the audience, the adults in the audience were going to laugh at the cartoons. The Mr. Magoo and UPA cartoons at that time period, like Family Guy, like The Simpsons of today, were aimed at this more adult audience.
Whoops! Oh, my. Oh, these split-level homes are treacherous. Oh, this modern decor. He's simply atrocious.
He was a cantankerous old man. He had bad sight. He was very funny. I first saw my first Mr. Magoo cartoon when I was in college in 1950 in a theater. Back in those days, Mr. Magoo cartoons were the hottest thing in the theaters. That's back when they ran a double feature. They ran news and ran a cartoon. And you walk by the theater, on the marquee, you would see the movies, but you also would say, new Mr. Magoo cartoon. So I think everybody sort of fell in love with him because he did no harm. He's a nice, he's just a nice old man. Jim Backus really personified him because Jim was the same way. Very nice guy, very easy to deal with.
What made those cartoons great was the great voice work of Jim Backus. Jim Backus was a well-known at the time radio actor. He had wild characterizations that he can do with his voices, and yet very distinct. Whenever you hear Jim Backus, you know it's Jim Backus, even if he's not Mr. Magoo.
Daily excursion. Oh, my George, haven't been on an excursion boat in years.
Mr. Magoo was Jim Backus. We would go into a storyboard session, and Jim would be so funny, and in his changes, we kept most everything he did. But he said, Paul, he said, every time I read for a producer in Hollywood, they'll call me up and I'll do a reading for them. They want to interview me for the part. And they say, Jim, you did a great job. You just did a great job, but we can't use you. He said, well, why not? He says, you sound too much like Magoo.
Oh, come now.
He would ad-lib a lot. They would have a script, of course, for Mr. Magoo. But he would go off and make all these little, no, I like that, oh, I like these cartoons in this movie theater. He'd just come off and say these things, you know, that were not on the script, and you can kind of hear it, you know, when he talks fast in some of the cartoons.
Yeah.
There really isn't much you can say about Jim Backus as the voice of Mr. Magoo. There's nobody else that could have done that voice. I mean, that he was, for better or for worse, Mr. Magoo. He hated that association in later years, but there was nobody else who could have done that voice any better.
Nonsense, Charlie. The magic is in Magoo's thumb. Yes, old green thumb Magoo. They call me in the vegetable circles.
He's very well known today as Mr. Howell on Gilligan's Island. You know, the millionaire. That's the voice of Mr. Magoo.
Those hippies. Why can't they work like everybody else?
UPA was influenced by modern art, and it was the art that drove the cartoons more than it was the stories. As a visual look, it was an explosive look. It really took animation by storm. It was so different from what they had been doing. Everything prior to that had been realistic backgrounds with flat characters in front of them. They felt that you needed a flat background with a flat character. And when there's a lot of truth to that, they do work together better. The modern art really changed the look of animation at the time and made it easier to take the cartoons to television, because television screen was smaller and needed broader, simpler shapes to really read easily. And it really had an impact on the theatrical cartoons and the television cartoons. I think there's some very beautiful work done in the 60s with Mr. Magoo on films like Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol and The Famous Adventures of Mr. Magoo, where they really pushed the styling, unlike some of the other studios who just kind of did simplified backgrounds behind the characters.
Yes, yes. Everything is here.
They were kind of an answer to or a reply to or an alternative to the Disney funny animal type stuff. And they had some really top designers. It was very designy stuff. And one of the guys that was really great in that area is Bob Singer. And I learned a lot from Bob to loosen up and use the design talent that I had but never had to use before. It wasn't traditional stuff. A lot of the backgrounds were very stylized, and that at the time was not my nature, but I learned to adapt.
I had to learn how to draw like UPA style. The Warner Brothers style where I had been was quite similar, but not as stylized as UPA. Disney did very standardized sort of animation style backgrounds. When you worked with UPA, it was more stylized like the old UPA, all this interesting shapes and line work. It's hard to explain the UPA style. You almost have to just look at it and reproduce it.
Oh, but there must be some mistake.
There were old established layout men like Bob Singer, Tony Rivera, Jacques Rupp, and others who were the head layout men on each film, The Famous Adventures of Mr. Magoo. But it was too much work for any one person to lay out. So I worked around on many of them. Moby Dick was one of the ones that I worked the most on in the show. But then when it came time to do the main titles, Jacques Rupp and I split that job, and we designed the titles.
The Famous Adventures of Mr. Magoo.
I quit this wonderful job I had had at Warner's, went over there and was thrust into the hectic schedules of TV cartoons. At Warner's, you had like 2 or 3 weeks to paint a background. And at UPA, we're turning out pictures really on an updated schedule quite fast. But I got used to it. I liked the idea of working fast. And sure enough, I did learn how to do layouts in 2.5 weeks.
Bob Singer was fast, and he pretty much handled his own shows, but some of the guys that just couldn't keep up or had very complicated material to work on, I would pick up the slack. I went where I was needed. A lot of the very complicated scenes that would have slowed down the head layout man were left for me to work out.
There is no need to sink the ship. Instead, let's just sink the tea.
There are 24 frames a second in a 35 millimeter film. And at Disney's, we drew every single frame. There are 24 drawings a second. At UPA, we did 6 drawings and shot them 4 times each. You notice the UPA animation was kind of jerky. Disney animation just sort of flowed. We made 900,000 drawings on Lady and the Tramp. In Magoo shorts, we do hundreds of drawings, not as many, but it was what they call limited animation.
Steady, men! I'm going to jump!
It was the earliest use of what we call today limited animation, and it's what came into vogue in the late 50s and 60s as television animation. But UPA was doing it way before that era as a way of doing something artistic, but also something economical.
Now, I have two gentlemen here who will help me illustrate. One of them has a bag of gold, and he is rich. And I take the bag of gold from that gentleman and give it to this gentleman who is poor. Yes. Now watch what happens.
I'm rich. I'm poor.
You see what I mean?
When UPA was really hot, people at Disney were very nervous because a lot of the Disney people had left and went over to UPA because we were allowed more freedom. Walt Disney did not allow that. He controlled everything. He wanted everything done his way, and that was a good reason for a lot of his success. They went to UPA and they were given a lot of artistic freedom.
Oh, yes, here we are. UPA Studios. Yes, indeed, a home lot.
The UPA studio is extremely important in the history of animation. They were the antithesis, the opposite of Disney. They were a studio made up by artists, a lot of them who broke away from the Disney studio in the mid-40s, partially because of rebelling against Disney doing the same thing over and over again, doing classic fairy tales in a certain style that we all recognize as the Disney style of cartooning. They felt that animation was more than just Snow White and Pinocchio. It could reflect what's going on in the real world. It could look like artwork in the real world, modern art. Didn't have to just look like classic European style art, which is what Disney was doing.
Oh, we have a jolly group, Mr. Magoo.
Layouts for Mr. Magoo were stylized, perhaps not quite as stylized as some of the early UPA stuff, but they had their own look and were very, very handsome. And you had several of the greatest background painters to really pop them. We had a great crew, and it was family there. UPA Studio was kind of unique in that it was small and tight. Everybody complimented everybody else, and you knew who was doing it. It wasn't like, you do layouts and they get done overseas or someplace else like that. It was right there. You could actually see the picture develop in front of your eyes. Stylization, I learned from the greats like Singer.
The strongest, the bravest, and the greatest.
Working there, I sharpened my skills for the rest of my career. Although it was a short 5 years, it was maybe the best 5 years of my career working there. I just loved the studio, the people who worked there, and the product we turned out.
Oh, roadblocks everywhere. Don't do this. Don't go there. Who called this a free country anyway?
In the late 1940s, their star had risen to such a point where they got a contract, a deal with Columbia Pictures to release short subjects. Warner Brothers had Bugs Bunny, Paramount had Popeye, MGM had Tom and Jerry, and of course Disney had Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. And Columbia didn't have any characters like that. Columbia asked UPA, this small studio, could you make us some cartoons in your cheaper way? To make Columbia happy, they called the cartoon Ragtime Bear. Another funny animal, except it wasn't really a funny animal cartoon. It was about a bear, but it was about a man who mistakes the bear for his friend. And the man was a nearsighted little old man who they called Mr. Magoo. The second cartoon they made using human characters was based on a Dr. Seuss story, and that was a little boy character named Gerald McBoing Boing. And Gerald McBoing Boing won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short in 1950, and this really put UPA on the map. Mr. Magoo, on the other hand, was extremely popular, very funny character that audiences really related to. And these two characters combined, this was like after a decade of Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry, audiences now were seeing a new type of cartoon that didn't have that full, lush watercolor backgrounds. They had this flat, impressionistic backgrounds. And the characters were caricatures. They weren't just, realistic renderings like Peter Pan, maybe. That put UPA on the map. Mr. Magoo, Gerald McBoing Boing, and an innovative new studio, and everything they did was new and exciting. They became the big thing in cartoons in the 1950s.
Oh, yeah. Good evening, everyone.
UPA in later years had got in financial trouble because they were not business-minded people. And even though they had a lot of creative people there and a lot of creative things, a lot of it did not work. It was ahead of its time, but they got a lot of Academy Awards. You can't knock that. So UPA it'd be nice if it was still there, but it's not.
No, they're gone. And stop thieves! This isn't a giveaway program. Oh, I'm ruined. You can't trust anybody.
With animation, that's what you work for, a good project. The money's there, but it ain't the money. It's the job, and working with the people. That sounds corny, but it's true. We in the animation business of that generation are blessed to be able to say that. I don't know how it is now with computers and all. It seems kind of impersonal, but in those days, everybody knocked everybody out with what they could do,